All right, good morning. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you everyone for joining us today. It's our last local consult meeting. And thank you all for joining us today for KDOT's 2021 round of local consult. I really wish we could have had these meetings in person. The conversations are rich and robust, and it is good to get to see people face to face. And even though I can't literally see Max Dibble and everyone else, I wish I could. And I look forward to the next round in 23 when we get out and are actually able to see people face to face. But quite frankly, we didn't want to delay in having these meetings. It's important. IKE, the Eisenhower Legacy Transportation Program, was built on public input. It really forms the foundation of this new program, and it is important that we hear from you today so that we can keep pace with our schedule and move another round of projects into the development pipeline. I'd like to take just a moment and have an opening message from Governor Kelly, and then we'll get right to work.
Hello, I'm Governor Laura Kelly. Thank you all for taking part in this critical effort to improve transportation in Kansas. 2 years ago, more than 2,000 Kansans participated in local consult discussions in communities large and small. Many of you were part of those discussions. In those meetings, you shared ideas to create more flexible approaches to infrastructure improvements. You challenged KDOT to become a better partner and solve more problems by eliminating harmful internal silos. We heard you loud and clear. Thanks to your time, your thoughtfulness, and collaborative spirit, today we have the Eisenhower Legacy Transportation Program, more commonly known as IKE. I signed this landmark 10-year program into law last year after it passed through the legislature with strong bipartisan support. Through IKE, we more than doubled transportation investments from 2018 to fiscal year 22. That's over $1 billion more for projects, for Kansas highways and bridges, for broadband infrastructure, for aviation, public transit, and for biking and walking paths. These investments are making transportation safer. They're strengthening critical infrastructure, creating jobs, and delivering more economic opportunities for our state. My administration is committed to keeping up this momentum. Earlier this summer, we announced nearly $1 billion worth of highway projects moving to the construction pipeline. As promised, we'll deliver one phase of the remaining T-Works projects to construction by the end of this year. And, true to my word, we are on track to close the aptly named Bank of KDOT by fiscal year 23. We're making sure that transportation dollars are used for transportation projects. Again, thank you for participating in the local consult process. Your input shapes the next 8 years of the IKE program, and we'll make sure we deliver the quality transportation system Kansans need. Take care.
Good to hear from Governor Kelly, and a thanks to the entire Kansas legislature for your support in passing the bipartisan Eisenhower Legacy Transportation Program. It is founded on 3 principles: partnerships, working closely with community members, and just like we saw on the opening slide, with transportation advocates, public officials, local officials, the public and private sector, business leaders, to make things better for Kansans. One of the ways we do that is by bringing lots of options to the table to solve problems. You'll see today we have some new projects to discuss with you in Northwest Kansas. And at the very heart and center of IKE, it's all about solving problems for Kansans. You know, sometimes communities have a transportation problem and we need to take that on directly. But sometimes there are problems that are larger than transportation, but transportation can be a part of the solution. And we want to be at the table to help whenever and however we can. So specifically what we're doing today is we're talking about how to move projects from ideas or concepts into the development pipeline. This is the first time we're meeting under the rolling program, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. Also in Washington, D.C., there is a good conversation going on around a possible Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA. We don't know precisely what the top line number is going to end up being, nor do we know the exact parameters of the existing and some of the new programs. But what we do know is that Kansas is in much better position when we have projects that have been through development and are ready to go. Thus, your input is needed today on highway modernization and expansion projects. We want to identify between $600 and $750 million in modernization and expansion projects to put into development. And I want to highlight that this is a statewide number. This isn't for any one specific region. I think it's worth pausing here on this slide to take into account, or to consider for just a minute, this implication of the first local consult meeting under the rolling program. There are many benefits from this rolling program, which means every 2 years we identify new projects instead of having a one list of a 10-year set list of projects. It means we can be more nimble and we can bring you new project ideas to meet your emerging needs or to get to some new opportunities. It means we have better data, and we'll be sharing that with you upon which to make decisions. Because of this flexibility, the other side of that coin is greater responsibility for transparency. I'm pleased to say that the new IKE website is actually an award-winning website, and there's a ton of information out there for you to go so that you can track progress and understand how decisions are being made. So as I said, I wish we could be in person today. That wasn't possible. So instead, we have put together an agenda that largely is similar to how we have conducted local consult meetings previously. We'll start with regional survey results. We then have project lists and scores and updated information. You'll then be placed into Zoom room breakouts to talk about projects that are of interest to you and to your neighbors. We'll then have a short break, get back together, hear about KDOT initiatives, a quick update, and then for the heart and soul of local consult, have the report backs to understand which projects are most important to your region and why. So, shout out District 3, thank you, in the Northwest. We had more than 2,000 respondents to the survey, and specifically from your region, just about 100 responses. And let's talk about what your priorities are reflected in that survey. First, and not surprisingly, safety comes in at the top priority at 25%, and we share that priority. And then I would say, as you look across the remainder of the results, this is a very balanced district. 18% on preservation, 14% on economic development, a split at 10% each for broadband to internet and resilience and sustainability, innovation and tech coming in at 8%. So you have, I would say, a good recognition of a balanced set of priorities. Let's look at some of the comments that we received. And I would particularly note, I think there's a good recognition in your district of the connectedness between highway preservation and safety. So you'll see, for example, at the top, well-maintained, smooth, and safe roads. We need shoulders. Preservation program keeps our highway safe and provides an enjoyable driving experience. I think it's also a really good recognition in your district about the interconnectedness of modes. We need a connection between the Kyle and UP. We need to improve the pricing of moving farm commodities. And I've got something to talk about at the end of this about Home Field Advantage, which is next Friday. An understanding that as communities grow, we need places for Kansans to want to live and work and raise their families. So we know communities are looking for more options for public transportation. And at the bottom, you see a request for more funds be directed to economic development projects. Under IKE, there is a whole slew, there's a portfolio of programs that are much easier to access now. I'll be talking about those, but I want to emphasize IKE is an accessible program so that we can try to help get resources to communities that need those resources and want to work in partnership with us. Now, I want to emphasize, we're getting ready to talk about new projects, but we have said over and over again, promises made, promises kept. I am sorry that it has taken so very long to deliver these T-Works projects. It is not for lack of trying, it has been for lack of money, as money was taken out of the state highway fund. I'm pleased to say, in the governor's budget and supported broadly on both sides of the house, that we are closing the bank of KDOT. I think we have something like $60 million left and then we're done. The bank is closed, the ATM and the drive-through are closed, and we're able now to deliver these projects. So on 383, we know there are concerns there. We know that we have been delivering that project in 3 phases. We have a public meeting coming up on October 20th in person from 4 to 6 to take public comments on that last phase. We also know 281 in Russell County. The first phase was let last year, and the last phase, phase 2, will be let in March of 22. We are delivering these projects, and I'm sorry that they were delayed, but they are coming to you. Now, as Governor Kelly mentioned, more than 2,000 Kansans helped build Ike. We had more than 2,000 Kansans respond to the survey. We have had great participation in local consult. What that tells me in total is that there is good momentum for transportation across the state. We recognize the value of infrastructure investments. In summary, Ike is a $9.9 billion program over 10 years, designed to strengthen infrastructure and help create more economic growth opportunities. Now, $5 billion of the $10 billion has been targeted for preservation. And in this district, you know how important that is, as it also connects to safety. There's another $2.3 billion that's been identified for modernization and expansion for the improvement projects. And that's what we're talking about today. In District 3, the Northwest, you'll see that we have guaranteed a minimum of $50 million to be spent on modernization and expansion. If you look down the column, that left column, you'll see that $1.1 billion has been identified as minimums. Minimum is an important word here because you recall I just said we're going to spend $2.3 billion in modernization and expansion. The difference, 1.1 to 2.3, represents the flexibility, our ability to get out and meet emerging challenges and new opportunities. Currently, District 3 has 3 projects in the development pipeline at $44 million. So clearly we have more room to add projects, not only to hit the 50 million, but perhaps additional work needs to be done as well. So I've talked about these pipelines. I'd like to explain those just a bit more. So legislature passed the program last spring. By May, we announced $1.6 billion worth of new projects going into the development pipeline. In that development pipeline, we do engineering, we look at right-of-way, we clear environmental permitting, and then we pull, as revenues allow, projects out of development, we move them to construction. This summer, we went around the state and announced about $750 million, about $750 million to go to construction, leaving about $825 million in the development pipeline. Now it's time, as these projects move forward, to backfill and put additional work into development. So how do we replenish this development pipeline? Well, you go back to the principles of the program itself. In partnership, we convene local consult meetings every 2 years now. We bring you more options, more ideas for projects. Sometimes there are ideas, sometimes they have come from communities themselves. We bring you new data, updated and refined estimates to solve problems together and put new work into development. So in front of you today, you have lots of information. Wouldn't be a KDOT meeting without lots of data. You also have a modernization project list. In this round of local consult, we don't have expansion projects identified for your district. You may have ideas for expansion work that you want to see done, that you want to suggest. But currently, the project list we're bringing to you is modernization. And this is the example. It's the one that has, the half-filled circles or the full circles, projects that are listed on the left. And then the scoring is what the project or what the circles represent. Now, I'm going to cover a little bit about what's the same and what's new under the 21 local consult meeting. We have the same scoring process. It has served us and the state well. We have the same project category types, the same factors and overall weights. We are bringing to you draft engineering scores, and we want to assess your input to create a regional priority score. It's important to note, we score projects the same so we can compare like projects. I'm not here to tell you that I think every single score is precisely right. But what I have high confidence in because we've used the same methodology to score all the projects, is that relative to each other, they are in proper order. Our process reflects the fact that we don't think we have a precise answer, and we are looking to you to help inform the overall scoring of the projects. Now, when I say we have the same project types, we have preservation and preservation plus now. Those are things like bridge repair, bridge replacement. The plus part of it is when sometimes if we can add a little shoulder or make a project a little bit better, we will in a really cost-effective, practical sort of way. Engineering data informs that selection process 100%. On the modernization category, which are the projects in front of you today, you take a look at the system that you have today and you say, how do you make it better? Maybe you add shoulders, you flatten hills, you improve intersections. In this case, engineering data drives 80% of the score and 20% is based on local input. Now on expansion projects like adding interchanges, adding passing lanes or new lanes, 50% of that is based on engineering data, 25% on economic analysis, and 25% on local input. Now, specific to modernization scoring, the engineering factors at 80% that we look at are things like geometrics, hills and curves, safety, capacity, essentially do we have too much traffic on that road, the pavement structure and surface. We look at other factors too, route continuity and previous investment. So it doesn't make any sense to just look at, a 5 or 10 mile segment of road and not think about what's on this end of it. Maybe it's a bridge, or what's on this end of it, because we're building a system, a network to move people and products and information across our state. So we can't look at individual segments without thinking about what's on either end of it. In terms of expansion, we look at engineering factors like future congestion and truck traffic, and economic factors like gross regional product and traveler time benefit. And of course, we look at those other factors as I've just discussed. We have, and this is one of the benefits of the rolling program, we have refined our analysis. It's more sensitive, if you will, based on the 2019 analysis. So first, we've updated and balanced the way we look at safety. So we used to just look at the crash rate of a segment. We now look at the frequency. So are we seeing accidents at a particular location much more frequently? So now we have a more balanced approach. The second one, in terms of upgrading our thresholds, the way that I like to explain it is to think of like grading on a curve. So as our entire system improves across the state because of consistent investment, what you start to see is a whole lot of projects that are getting a very good score. Actually, in reverse, it's a lower score. But what you see is a clustering of projects. So we need a way to better discern between the projects. So we have updated the threshold. We're now grading on a harder curve, if you will. And we've updated our economic analysis. In 2019, we looked at both the gross regional product along with traveler time savings and divided by cost. And then we added that same component, GRP plus traveler time savings. Now we simply add those two factors together and divide the entire thing by cost. The reason is because money matters, and we want to make sure we're squeezing every penny out of taxpayer dollars. So we're taking a harder look at the expansion projects and making sure we're getting good buys across the state. Economic analysis only applies to that expansion category. Okay, so in terms of the 2021 list and exactly what you're seeing updated data, as you see on the slide there. We got out and did a statewide passing lane analysis. So you'll recall I said we passed the program and then we announced projects going into development within about 8 weeks' time. We've now had another year to take a look at really on the ground, what do we see in terms of, is it possible to add a passing lane in one area or another? Or perhaps, and I think this is in District 3, you'll see, maybe we've added some interchange or intersection improvements because in consultation with the district engineers and in consultation with communities, we now have better grounded information. We also have better cost estimates. That will be an example you'll see on US 281. Our scoring methodology, I'm pleased to say, those things that I just covered on the previous slide, have been informed by public input. We are listening and we're taking action. And we have some new projects that have been added to the list. Okay, so remember I said this is the first meeting under the rolling program. So in 2019, we had a list of projects. And this is the part of the meeting where we show our math, okay? So in 2019, we had this list. Some projects moved on into development and construction. That remaining list moved into today for us to discuss. We've added some new projects and refined cost estimates. And in a couple of places, we have not scored projects. And we'll talk a bit more about that in just a minute. Okay, so to start with the easy part, some projects, 3 in this case, moved on to development or construction. I think Maggie's done a nice job here of aptly putting a banner on here that's orange. You're welcome to discuss these projects if you like. I don't know that I think that's the best use of your time because these are already moving forward, but they are available for you to see so you can literally track what's happened from 2019 into 2021. Now, you'll also see those categories 2 and 3 that I talked about. You're going to see that you have 13 projects to discuss, including 2 new projects. This is also your opportunity. If you want to see additional projects added to the list, this is when you bring up those ideas. The way to tell the difference, the new projects are in italics. And I also mentioned that we have not necessarily carried every single project forward for scoring. These projects remain on our list. They're on our radar. If you have great interest in these projects, please tell us, let us know. But this as a very practical matter, I'm trying to be really honest with people. A good example would be in some of the parts of the state where we have seen billion-dollar ideas. And I know it's not likely that we're going to be able to get to that billion-dollar idea in the next 2 years. Maybe not at the end of this program, maybe not until the beginning of the next program. I literally don't know when. So we're trying to help people understand we're not going to score a project if we don't think it's likely, pretty likely to be carried forward. We want to be honest with people and forthright. We can score any of these projects again if there's big public interest. But I was at a conference a couple of years ago, and it was Pennsylvania DOT that I was talking about their rolling program, and I took this lesson to heart. Over the many years that they'd had rolling programs, they kept adding projects and adding projects and adding projects. And their project lists were billions and billions and billions of dollars. And they said that they had taken a step back and realized that money matters. And I thought, well, yeah, that's true. Money does matter. And they had to go through the painful process of removing billions of dollars of projects, ideas. And I want to be forthright with people and bring project lists that are grounded in reality for people to react to. And that's what you have in front of you today. These projects aren't gone. They're not off the radar, but we want to bring you a fresher list of things that we think are more relevant. But all projects are important. So let us know if you think these need to be added back. So in summary, the list you have in front of you today, 3 projects moved on to construction or development. There are 2 new projects that were added from the priority formula or from district feedback. We didn't score 3 projects, and there's 1 project with an updated cost estimate. Now, this is my favorite slide in the whole deck because this is where a lot of confusion starts to happen. Scoring isn't programming. Here's why. You could have the top scoring project in the state. It gets a 10 in terms of need, and it costs $10. And then projects 2, 3, and 4 maybe each cost $3.3, and they each score, something like a 9, an 8, and a 7. And we have to think about, is the better buy 1 project at $10 or 3 projects at $3.3? Because we're not trying to build the ultimate project for any one part of the state. We are building a system, a team of projects to serve our state. That's why just scoring in isolation isn't the sum total of selection process. We have to program based on contractor, like how much capacity contractors have for doing work, how much budget we have. So those are the kinds of factors, and we want some geographic equity too. So all of those things we take into consideration. All right, so we're about to go into the Zoom rooms. I ask you to think about some things like what's new or changed in your area. Think about those survey results. Look at a couple of new projects and the updated cost estimates. And then we would like to know what your priorities are in terms of high and medium for projects to move into development. All right, so we're about to go into these Zoom rooms. You'll have 30 minutes for conversation, which will get you to 9:30. Then you'll have a 5-minute break and we will reconvene at 9:35. If you have any trouble with getting into the Zoom rooms, use that chat feature and Lisa will be happy to help you get to the room where you need to be. All right, everybody, thank you. I'll see you back in about 35 minutes. All right, welcome back, everyone. And I look forward to the report out. As I said, we'll quickly have a tour of new KDOT initiatives that are underway. And the first thing I want to point out are the new programs. I mentioned earlier in the presentation that we have a portfolio of programs, many more programs to access with additional resources to help communities. So whether it's the new cost share program, those funds are available for both state and local infrastructure, to innovative tech, to a driver's ed program, to the reinstated local bridge program. A host of programs are available for you to tap into, and I encourage you to do that. I also want to give a big shout out to the KDOT team, as well as our contractor partners and our engineering partners. We stood up each of these new programs despite COVID in 2020. I also want to spend just a moment and talk about some changes at the federal level and ways that we want to pursue additional funding. So in light of what we know to be long-standing Kansas infrastructure priorities and the need to expand growth opportunities in Kansas, we are looking for sort of that sweet spot of then how to find additional federal dollars. There's certainly a lot of talk at the national level about racial equity, and that is important. When I talk at the national level, I also talk about the importance of rural equity. We often see in rural states sometimes economic outcomes, health outcomes, and education outcomes are not as high. And it's important to keep that in mind. And again, what the supporting role transportation can be in advancing all of those outcomes. We also talk about greenhouse gas emissions and the contribution or the source of many of those emissions. 25%, actually it's at 28% in the United States come from the transportation sector. In Kansas, when you combine the transportation sector and the ag sector, you come up with 53%. So we need to think about ways that we can better address emissions. One of those is a program I'm happy to talk about, a pilot program called HOME, Heartland Opportunities, Markets, and Environment. So when we're out doing a Preservation Plus project, when we're running broadband, when we're already out doing preservation work, sometimes we run that fiber in a priority freight corridor because we know in the future infrastructure will need to talk to vehicles. Or sometimes when we open the trench and pay for the mobilization costs, we invite the private sector in, and by the state paying for the mobilization costs, which we would do anyway, it's a way to more cost effectively spread broadband across the state. I want to be clear, we're not at all competing with the private sector. Rather, we're facilitating a lower cost deployment of broadband. In this case, along 2 corridors, what we're taking a look at is if we tee off those corridors that we're already doing that work and make broadband available to farmers so that they could tap into the data analytics required to do carbon trading. So those are 2 programs this is 2 pilots, I should say, that we're standing up, and we're pleased with the response that we've gotten from farmers who are interested in taking a look at perhaps rotating crops differently, diversifying crops, improve soil health, as well as more water conservation. Also, we have seen from private industry a response to the Biden administration's push for electric vehicles. Now, we know it is not going to be a light switch that we move immediately from our fossil fuel driven cars to EVs. It will be a gradual shift, but it's probably an accelerating shift. We heard over the Super Bowl that passenger trucks will largely be EVs in the coming years. Well, whenever you have challenges, you also have some opportunities. So we are taking a look at what that might mean in terms of KDOT revenues. This slide is concerning to me when I saw the projections by 2045. Upwards of 60% of KDOT revenues could be coming from state sales tax as we see the gas tax revenues decline. 60% is a concerningly high number. I don't know that that's sustainable. So we need to look at other options for funding transportation in the long run. One concept that's being discussed at the federal level is to move from charging people a gas tax, essentially charging you for the kind of fuel you use, and moving rather to charging you for the kind of road that you use or the amount of road that you use. Now, these conversations have been going on the East and West Coast for years, but there hasn't been a Midwest voice at the table. We need to have our views represented. So earlier this spring, we were awarded a grant from USDOT to take a look to conduct a study about road usage charges. I want to be super duper clear. This is a voluntary study. We are not enacting a road usage charge. One state is not going to be able to do that. It's going to take a national effort at some point if that's the decision of the way the country's going to go. We will be better off if we have a voice at the table and data to stand up, whatever it is our view, our collective view is. So we will be engaging with rural communities, ag industry, and commercial trucking to better understand Kansans' views about a road usage charge study. We start first with outreach. Next week, a statewide survey will be going out to tap into your thoughts, your concerns, and quite frankly, where you say, I have questions, I don't understand what this might mean, and to invite you to participate in the study. We've already had lots of chambers of commerce indicate that their members are interested in participating. And we've also heard from commercial fleets that some of their members want to participate. Essentially, what you're going to do is take a look at recording the amount you drive, and then that will help you understand what a road usage charge might sort of add up to. In step 2, the design will identify different ways for folks to record their mileage. Paper and pen, the old-fashioned way can work. An app on your phone, maybe reading your odometer. No money will be exchanged, nothing like that. It's a study, a voluntary study, so that we can see what the pros and cons and concerns and the things that might need to be mitigated in the Midwest would mean. We would then roll over by March of 23 to actually conduct the study with results available in March of 24. Again, this is voluntary. But quite frankly, we need to have our voice at the table and we need the data to support the conclusions that we draw. If you'd like to participate, please let Joel Skelly know, and his contact information is here. And next week, we will be issuing a statewide survey. Also, I'm happy to talk about Charge Up Kansas. KDOT was recently asked to administer the Volkswagen settlement money. It's about $2.3 million, and we'll be able to facilitate the deployment of additional charging stations. Won't be all the charging stations that the state likely needs, but it's a good start. If under IIJA, if that's passed, we will see an additional something like $8 million per year that would flow to the state for additional charging and other sorts of things, perhaps induction charging or other sorts of things related to EVs. I want to be clear to say that KDOT's not going to own the infrastructure. That's not our business, right? But what we can do is facilitate getting, identifying locations and facilitating the deployment through the private sector. Which gets me to Home Field Advantage next Friday. It is, it's a virtual conference. We will be in studio in Manhattan, I'm glad to say, with panelists from, particularly from the Heartland, some real experts related to transportation and technology and agriculture. It's sponsored by KDOT, Kansas Department of Ag, and our 10 interior MASTO states. It's to talk about the intersection of transportation, agriculture, and technology with both public and private sector leaders. The intent is to talk about how to drive down the cost of transporting ag products, expand economic opportunities, diversify crops, and improve soil health. If you'd like to register, there's the link. And I hope you'll be able to join us to have really what I consider to be a groundbreaking kind of conversation. These three these three sectors, transportation, ag, and technology, are vitally important to our future. We don't often all get in the same room, so I'm looking forward to the conversation. So with that, Lisa, let's bring up the modernization list, and it's time for the report back from the facilitators. All right, there we go. And so when you see the stars, those indicate high priority, and the arrows indicate medium priority. So interestingly, and this is, I'm glad to see actually, you see this first project, 365, it's in italics, which means it's a new project or a reconfigured project. Good to see that it's, well, what I mean to say is, I'm glad that we have the opportunity to bring new projects to you. That's exactly the point of a rolling program. So would one of the facilitators like to talk to us about the, about 365, the new project? Mike Moriarty, I think I was able to kind of bounce between rooms for a while. Mike, I think your group had a good conversation about this project.
Yes, Secretary, we absolutely did. So during our conversation, we discussed that the interchange is a busy location, and in addition to some safety concerns, it does have a wide range of traffic flow issues. And improving this location would complement the previous and ongoing investments along the Vine Street corridor, which would include the roundabout improvements taking place to the south and the commercial arterial type improvements that have been previously made to the north.
Hey, Mike, I appreciate you both talking about the new project, but also the importance of route continuity and thinking about previous investments to really to build some synergies out there and get a big bang for our buck. Calvin, I think I also heard some good conversation in your group.
Yeah, so to Mike's point, there was some discussion about how this would complement the existing project that is underway right now, which is the extension of the bypass, the 183 bypass around the southwest side of Hayes that the county's gotten a build grant for. This would help complement that, as well as some of the development that is happening at that immediate interchange right now. There was also a comment about how the scope of the project should include addressing some of the safety issues on some of the adjacent roads. There is some confusion apparently between for drivers as to what which roads are the on-ramps to the highway versus local roads. So the project should address that also.
Okay, thank you, Calvin. Any other groups?
Secretary, this is Greg. We had really good discussion on this also. The thing I would add is they just stress the importance of this with routing oversized and hazmat loads. Currently, they have to go through the city, and this would really be the last linchpin that needs to get completed to where they can bypass the city. And we also had really good regional support for this in addition to the city and county support in our discussion.
Greg, thank you for the comment about regional support. That's one of the, I think one of the strengths of local consult is not to just have one-on-one meetings with communities. Every community has the right and should advocate for their needs, but there's only so much money. So we have to figure out how to work in partnership at a regional level to prioritize what's going to benefit the region the most. And then we work down our list of priorities. So I appreciate you pointing that out. If we don't have any additional comments on 365, let's also talk about 321, which has 3 stars on 281. Comments about that project. And Rachel, I think your group was pretty active on this one.
Yes, there was a lot of support for this project in room 4, primarily because of safety concerns. There was a comment that they don't want their kids to drive on this road. It's very narrow, without shoulders. And then true to local consult style, they provided some additional nuggets of information, including that this is the wide load designated route, but it is narrow without shoulders.
Thank you, Rachel. Good. Any other comments related to this one? Maybe Mike?
Yes, Secretary, we discussed projects 331 and 321. Folks in our group are more familiar with Project 331. That was the route that they traveled, so they felt that that was a big issue from their standpoint. However, they recognized 321 has some of the same issues that Rachel had talked about. Again, the corridor is narrow, it's hilly, lacks shoulders, things like that, all of which lead to safety concerns. And a key issue we discussed in our group was It's difficult for farm equipment to travel the corridor safely and efficiently.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Okay, other comments related to 321?
Secretary, this is Calvin. It's very similar comments in my group. I would just say that there was some discussion about, because of the size of the project, that the folks in my group thought it might make sense to break the project up into chunks to help make it more manageable to construct and also for the drivers when they're having to drive on this.
Thank you, Calvin. That is a good point. As we look to move projects from development into construction, there are a couple of things we think about. One of those aspects is whether a community can bring money to the table and help partner to lower the overall cost. But we also talk with communities about their willingness to phase a project or to break it into smaller pieces. And then in some places we talk about, hey, let's look at passing lanes instead of 4 lanes. I would be the first to say, I understand that those aren't always what people want to do, but sometimes people recognize getting an improvement sooner rather than later is the best way to improve safety. And that has to be a top priority for all of us. Okay, other comments related to maybe 331, 366, or 327? Calvin or Rachel?
So the K-25 corridor was a big part of the discussion in our group. We had several people support improvements along the K-25 corridor, particularly north of Oakley. Just similar issues as 281. It's a narrow road, extremely hilly, not a lot of passing opportunities. And when you get caravans of oversized, overweight, or farm vehicles, it's a risky maneuver to try to pass. And so there was discussion about just general improvements, but maybe that KDOT should also look at potential for passing lanes along that stretch.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, for project 327, we scored that high primarily because of the high scores that it already had and the safety and route continuity. There was also a comment on project 366 that this was a really important project because of the number of fatalities that the area has seen.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Thank you. All right, and I'll open it up now for any other comments from the facilitators about any of the projects.
Secretary, this is Greg. This isn't specific to the projects, but just really wanted to stress the importance of the short line rail funding program in this area. There was mention that the ethanol plant by Phillipsburg is having a $200 million retrofit that will really increase the amount of wheat coming in. And so that's both important on improving rail so they can get up to speed faster, and then also just the truckloads that will bring in. So just an important regional aspect there.
Yeah, Greg, thank you for that note. And let's make sure we take note of that. That's exactly what we want to see out of local consult, is to understand what today's problems are, but also to get an advance as much as possible on where we're going to see some development, so that, you know, these infrastructure projects, they have a long lead time and they need to last a long time. So more conversation, more heads up, very much appreciated. Okay, any other comments from facilitators?
Secretary, this is Calvin.
Sure.
There was a lot of discussion about the US 83 corridor, which obviously was a big topic of conversation in our Southwest meeting yesterday, but just kind of similar comments that the stretch from Scott City to Oakley is a very heavily traveled route, and that probably needs to be brought into the conversation, at least in the next local consult, in terms of adding that as some of our priorities to look at.
Okay, make sure we take a note of that so that we can bring that, so that we can take a look at those concepts and be able to talk about those. Also, I'd like to point out, I don't want it to sound like, hey, we're going to see you every 2 years and that is it. Feel free to work through Jeff Stewart, your district engineer, or, you know, through our planning group or through design. I mean, there are any number of ways through our modal programs. We want to stay connected so that we can do as good a job as we can for the entire state. All right. Any other comments or questions? All right, if not, we'll go on. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So for your colleagues who were not able to participate today, we have been recording these sessions, and you can view them on demand for up to 2 weeks and provide additional comments, or if you just want to go back and kind of brush up on a particular point, these are available for the next 2 weeks. Next slide. You'll receive a short survey at the end of this meeting, please. We value your input. It's short and it'll help us do a better job next time. And on to the last slide. So you will hear back from us no later than the end of this year, where we will be moving additional projects, $600 to $750 million worth of projects into the development pipeline. And I sincerely mean this. You speak. When citizens speak and KDOT listens, then together we work. We work really hard for you. Thank you very much and be safe out there. Thank you.